In this equation, we're going to talk about solving equations by graphing. So go ahead and pause and copy down your standards and your I can statements, and we'll get started. Okay, now, I don't want you to copy any of this down. I just want you to listen to what I'm saying. Okay, so notice that we have the linear equation here, and it's set equal to 0 here. So notice that if I take away being set equal to 0 and I replace that with an f of x or with a y, that I've turned it into a function. Basically, it's the same thing. So the big thing I wanted to point out for you here is exactly what a 0 is. If you're asked to find the root, okay, if you're asked to find the 0, if you're asked to find the solution or the x-intercept, it's all the same thing. And you already know how to find the x-intercept, okay? So I just didn't want the terminology to mess you up. I wanted to point out that all of those things are the same thing. Okay, so here we go. We're going to solve this equation with one root. So basically, it's got one solution, and that's solving it for x. So hopefully by now, you know how to solve an equation for x. So you're going to subtract 3 from both sides. That's going to leave you with negative 3 equals 1/2 x. And then hopefully by now, those of you who are still scared of fractions, how do I clear a fraction? You flip and multiply. Okay, so times 2 over 1, and then what you get when you solve that is negative 6 equals x. So there's your solution. It's also your root. It's also your x-intercept. Okay, that's it. That's all you have to do for those. Let's do another one. Now for this one, it's asking you to solve it by graphing, and it wants you to find the related function. Okay, now don't let that mess you up. It's very simple to do. So what you want to do is set that equation equal to 0. So notice right here we've got the 2 all by itself. If I subtract the 2 from both sides, I end up with 0 equals 1/3 x plus 1. Okay? Now, that's all it means by find the related function. That's all it means, is turn it into a function. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide, but we've already covered a lot of it. Okay, so the related function is here, and we've already found that. Okay, so in order to graph that, you just make a table and find your intercepts. Okay, that's all you have to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an XY table, okay, and you're going to plug zeros in for your intercepts. So for this one, you have 1/3 times 0 plus 1. That's your x-intercept, remember. So 0 plus 1 is 1. Okay, so there's your y-intercept. Now for your x-intercept, you plug 0 in for y. Well, remember, your f of x is the same as y equals. So that becomes 0 equals 1/3 x plus 1. You subtract 1 on both sides, and then you clear the 1/3 by multiplying by 3. So x equals negative 3. Okay, so when you come down here to the graph, notice the points where this line crosses both of the axes. Okay, so your y-intercept is 0, 1, which is right there. And then your x-intercept is 0, negative 3, which is right there. So then that's the graph of this line. Okay, that's it. Now, on this next example, you're not asked to graph, but you are asked to solve it algebraically. So all that means is solve for x. Okay, so go ahead and pause and give that one a try. Okay, so hopefully on this one you subtracted 4 from both sides. That's going to give you negative 6 equals 2/3 x. and then you flip and multiply. Okay, so now you've got 6 times 3 is negative 18 over 2, and then you reduce that to negative 9. Okay, so that's how you solve it algebraically. Easy peasy, right? Well, let's do one with no solution. I know we talked about that in the last section. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, here we go. So remember, you're trying to solve that for x. So when you do that, if you subtract 2x from both sides, notice that they cancel out and you're left with 5 equals 3. Well, hopefully by now you know that that is not equal to 3. That is false, right? So we know that to be no solution by now, hopefully. But what if I had to graph that, okay? Well, remember that you need to get that equation to equal 0, okay? So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so if we had 5 equals 3 and we said that that was false, we actually need to go in and we need to subtract 3 from both sides so that we end up with an equals 0. So we end up with 2 equals 0, okay? Now, that is the related function. All right, so that would be f of x equals 2, which is the same as y equals 2. Okay, so if you were asked to graph that on an xy axis, it would be up here at 2 on the y-axis, and it would be a horizontal line. Okay, I'll outline that in a different color so that you can see it. Okay, so that's why there's no solution, is because that line will never cross the x-axis. Okay, so here's another one. Go ahead and pause this one and give it a try. I want you to solve it algebraically, and then I want you to give me the related function, and then I want you to set it equal to 0, and then I want you to graph it. Okay, so hopefully you added your 3x to both sides and you came up with 6 equals 7, which you know is no solution. And then when you went to graph it, you had your 6 equals 7, and then you remember you got to get it equal to 0, so minus 7 on both sides, and that's going to give you negative 1 equals 0. Okay, so now you have your f of x equals 1. That's basically the same thing as y equals 1. So then you go over on your graph and you draw a horizontal line at 1 on the y-axis. Okay? So that's basically it, folks. Just remember that you need to try to find the intercepts. If you see that your variables are not going to cancel out, then find your intercepts in order to graph. If you see that your variables are going to cancel out, okay, then it's almost always going to be a horizontal line, and so all you have to do is solve it for 0 and then set it equal to f of x or y. Okay? So make sure you bring your questions to class, and I'll see you later.